Yeah, so my name's Dustin Minch. I'm actually head of mining intelligence for CoinGenius. And, basically, I'm just a crypto miner. And you guys can find more about me at cryptominertips.com. That's really it. Short and sweet.
Nice. Okay, cool. So we're going to jump into this. There's a lot to talk about as it relates to mining. Obviously, the big thing on everybody's mind is what's happening with the halving. So there's a few things we're going to cover in this. We're going to talk about the halving, what's it going to do, the price, talk about a lot about what Matt specifically has been speaking about lately. You guys released this great report, so I'd love you to speak about that, about the difficult adjustment and the implications to hardware specifically. Is it already priced in? Opportunities for the average person to capitalize on cryptocurrency mining now and into the future, and then how mining will evolve as well. So with all that said, let's start with the topic at hand, the BTC halving. I know we touched on a little bit earlier in one of the panels, but let's just go around the horn and give your thoughts overall, and then we kind of break it out into, what do you think it's going to do to the price? We'll start there, and then getting to the difficulty adjustment and getting a little bit more technical for the folks that have been, I think, chomping at the bit for this conversation.
So at the halving, we're going to the moon, baby. Let's go. The reality is, something that we've seen happen a few times is the price will probably rise just before, and then it'll fall, and then it'll rise again. Saw that in 2016, which made no sense to me, but what do I know? I'm just a stupid miner, I guess. So that, I think, that's what we've seen before, and that's probably what we'll see again. However, it's a bit different this time because of this global catastrophe. So maybe people will wake up a little bit more this time. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think there's really two pieces with halving. People are looking at what's going to happen with the miners, what's going to happen with difficulty and capitulation, and then what happens with the price of Bitcoin. And I think they're very I don't think what happens in the mining network really is going to influence the price of Bitcoin a ton, aside from sell pressure, and that changes throughout the cycle. But overall, the margin of miners is what's important. So what's their profit margin? And that gets influenced by difficulty and price. So if Bitcoin's at 15,000, but difficulty's gone up significantly, and a miner's margin is very thin, they have to sell a lot of their Bitcoin if they're undercapitalized, or they have a strategy of selling Bitcoin to cash. So I've had a lot of questions with people asking what's going to happen with the price of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin's at 8,000 or 12,000 or 20,000. Well, you got to factor in where's difficulty at, because what's going to influence a miner's treasury management is their margins. And margins are really influenced by the price of Bitcoin as well as difficulty.
Good, man. Good. Yeah, great talking with you. Good seeing you. I'm really picking up what you're laying down.
Yeah. Sure. Dustin, your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I don't really know exactly how it's going to go. I'm kind of on the belief of what Marshall's saying. I feel like the price is definitely going to drop some.
Right in front of us.
Somebody else talking. I'm more,
have any digital identity stuff in the works?
I'm sorry, I'm hearing somebody else, but, I suspect that, like I said, what Marshall was saying, just to kind of echo that on that again, the price is probably going to drop some, but I think that, we're going to see a lot more people get into mining this time around than we did the last time around. I would like to see a lot of the altcoins start to go up for the mineable altcoins, especially, obviously Tron, Raven Coin. I want to see that,
Don't be that guy. Come on.
What's that? I'm a big time GPU miner. I've kind of stepped out of the Bitcoin mining scene just because it's a big boys game right now. I mean, I don't have the electric rate to compete with, 3 cents, 1 cent electric rate right now. So I'm more focused on the altcoins than I am Bitcoin, to be honest with you. That's really all I got on that.
And what about you, Tron? What are your thoughts?
I think for the happening. The difficulty will adjust as miners drop off. If they're profitable, that'll just kind of scale back a little bit. That's kind of independent, right? They'll drop off if they're not profitable until it becomes profitable, at least for the people with low marginal costs and fixed capital costs. As far as the price, every time there's been this discussion, every time, meaning the other 2 times, that the miners, there's not going to be enough money for the miners and things like that. I think that is all built into just automatically adjust. I think what's happened though is half as many Bitcoin come out, and so that's just less selling pressure. I think miners in general, maybe not Marshall, but some of the other miners are just in it for the profit, right? They mine, they sell, they mine, they sell at a profit, and that selling pressure, I think, is one of the reasons the price goes up. I think the first time the inflation rate it will below what used to be the dollar slate, just the 2% thing that they've been trying to keep, and now they're just blowing it out of the water. But 2% was kind of their strategy, and we were going to drop actually below that, which I think is interesting. And then back to Dustin's point, we're actually trying to make the mining algorithm for Ravencoin be GPU centric, and that's really just to bring in kind of as many people and not people with big mining farms and cheap electricity. It's anybody who has a gaming rig, flip it on at night and be profitable.
I think also mining is really about survivability, comparative advantages against other miners, because when things get difficult, when I say difficult, when the price of Bitcoin corrects or difficulty goes up and compresses margins, miners shut off. So it's about being being the most efficient. That's really what it's about. Because if you could survive, other miners, they blow out layer after layer after layer, and then the Bitcoin they were mining starts going to you. So that's why it's this self-correcting mechanism. Difficulty is like a gravity on margins. If too many miners enter the network, it's a gravity where it pulls everyone's margins down, and it knocks out those inefficient miners. And if margins become thin, then the inefficient miners get knocked off, and then the gravity of difficulty improves margins. So overall, over the long term, intermediate, long term, 60%, 70% of the network is fairly efficient. And also, we're going through this hardware upgrade cycle. It really started in 2019, but there's probably still 35% of the network that's running old equipment. So it's truly a luxury to launch an operation now. You're going to be deploying the proper electrical infrastructure to handle these mining rigs that now consume twice as much of the power, and you're going to be allocating your capital directly into the most efficient machines, while 35% of the network is still running old equipment. So to me, it's a luxury to launch now. You're getting in early in this hardware upgrade cycle. So, it's like I said, it's about comparative advantages. It's about survivability. And you don't need to be you of course want to be the best, but you really got to be in a specific quartile, because when times get tough, like we saw a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, the top layers, the most inefficient, they're going to blow out first. Difficulty will favorably adjust, and your margins are going to get better as a result of that, if you could survive.
I disagree with you, Dustin, actually. I don't think you're going to see more miners. Right now, to Matt's point, you're seeing a ton of people getting smoked. The secondary market is flooded with all kinds of crap gear. I mean, I can buy whole setups. I can buy freaking double lot copper cabling for transformers on the secondary market from miners who just overbuilt in 2017 because they got FOMO and overbuilt. So I'm seeing the exact opposite. People getting wrecked running S9s from Bitmain, all kinds of stuff. I mean, I have people going to data centers ripping copper out of the walls because I can buy it that cheap. People are wrecked right now.
So you think
you learn your lesson from the 2013 plunge, 2014, you're learning it now. So most of those people don't have the benefit that Matt and I had on getting wrecked in 2013 from overbuilding. And now most people are so pissed that they're never coming back.
Right. So you don't feel like there's going to be like during this next bull cycle, you don't feel like there's going to be a bigger attraction even to like GPU mining on that scale too. I mean,
it's interesting though, right? Because the first time I ever met Tron in person, I tried to poke holes in the algorithm he made for Ravencoin, and I said, okay, can I make an ASIC this way, this way, this way? The reality is, if your coin is profitable enough, somebody will figure it out, and that's the problem I see with like wildly successful projects. I don't know if anybody's made one for Raven yet, but there's a lot of smart people around. What I'm saying is, it's interesting now though. You have a lot of people building rigs for folding at home to help with coronavirus, so that could be a whole nother vertical that we're not taking into account, which could be really cool.
Yeah. For me personally, though, it's like, how does this ecosystem survive without creating a equal playing ground where everybody can participate? Because if you create an ecosystem where everybody can participate, I just feel like that's going to be able to thrive more than a centralized.
Cool coming out for that. There's a guy working on something called optical proof of work with like light matrix stuff. But I mean, that stuff's far off because an FPGA can emulate that stuff pretty well.
Right.
Bitcoin's always been an arms race, and I think for now it'll always be an arms race. But Bitcoin's not the only project, right? I know Crystal has a lot of experience with EOS, with her Sense project. I don't know, maybe you want to put some input there.
Crystal, welcome. I'm so glad you were able to join. So
I had some technical difficulties there.
Oh, no worries. We've been talking about the Bitcoin halving event and talking about, the advantages of the new gen hardware versus the old gen hardware. We saw the mining difficulty adjustment happen, and a lot of the old gen just wasn't profitable, so they had to capitulate. I know Matt's put out a very significant report about this. Really interesting stuff. We can dive in a little bit further, but just want to hear your perspective in terms of mining and maybe, seeing how it's kind of evolved over time and where we're at today.
So I wanted to join this discussion from the perspective of the proof of stake or delegated proof of stake miners. It's a little bit different, but I think that we need to have an equal voice and have that side of the house sort of represented. As a block producer, I was part of the initial genesis of the EOS blockchain. And if you saw the evolution of what has happened in the block production world, all of the original community who had originally not only started the network, but supported it and held it up is basically completely out of pay range. So we have seen almost all of the original block producers go completely under. They have closed their businesses. They have left the chain. They have started their own forks of the chain. And so, I sort of looked at that as indicative of whether or not we think that this is successful. Do we think that delegated proof of stake actually even did its job, or is there a next evolution? So I was really interested to see the thoughts on what the new version of mining looks like and what we have to look forward to, because I think we have gone through sort of a failed attempt, at least when it came to the EOS chain.
Yeah, I could touch on that. I really, I launched my digital currency hedge fund in 2017. It was actually an Ethereum focused ICO fund. And we pivoted early 2018 because of what I was seeing with my company, Blockware Solutions. So we're large validators for Loom. We're going to validate for Scale Labs. We understand the staking side. But really, what's staking? I think a lot of Web3 companies really discuss how staking is such a significant deal. Well, I think staking is supposed to be, you're putting in a stake, you're securing the network, you're aligned. There's no better way to be aligned than purchasing assets with 3 to 5 year life cycles and investing millions into it, and they can't be repurposed. That is staking, and that's the Bitcoin network. Miners are buying equipment. They're not buying Bitcoin. They're buying ASICs that's only good for mining Bitcoin with 3 to 5 year life cycles, building out facilities and infrastructure, buying ASICs, mining rigs. That is valuable. That creates a network that's sticky. that keeps miners around for years. And that's why EOS, the stakers and all these proof of stake protocols, they just sell their coin and they go off to the next one if they need to. So by forcing miners, or I shouldn't say forcing, but miners buying equipment and facilities, engaging in 5-year power, 3-year power contracts, 5-year power contracts, that's a true contract. And that creates strong network effects.
Well, Crystal, that's a good point. I was a block producer for a year, for those of you who don't know. And EOS turned from something that was a really cool project to something that was easily co-opted. And having starting another project called Bitcoin Classic, which is now Bitcoin Cash, I witnessed firsthand how hard it is to affect change into the Bitcoin protocol. It's seemingly much easier to do it in a delegated proof of stake model because there's much less infrastructure involved. All you really have to do is make a capital contribution in exchange for tokens. However, with mining, everybody says, oh, you can repurpose your data center. Nobody wants my data center that has 3 walls to run a web hosting data center. That's the reality. So I have sunk costs that will never be recouped. So a lot of people say, well, won't bad actors kill Bitcoin, this and that? Everybody's incentivized not to, because what else am I going to do with 150 megawatts in a 2-walled building that has no cooling?
And ASICs, right? And Bitcoin ASICs that only mine SHA-256, right?
I mean, beyond that, you have like it's a one-way street. It's not liquid. Delegated proof of stake is extremely liquid, so you don't really have any skin in the game. You're just a victim to the price. That's really all.
All right. Well, we have a lot of comments and people trying to get into the action. Some of the people are asking, is POS taking over POW? I mean, what do you guys think is like really the evolution of POS versus proof of work? Is it going to really replace it? Is there room for both? I mean, how do you see this really playing out?
I don't think either are very prepared. I mean, if you're a staker or you're delegating your assets, it doesn't matter if you're getting a 10% return if the asset goes down 40%, right? So it's you need a derivatives market, really. You need a futures market, so that if you put up a stake of however many coins, you could hedge it out for 12 months or 6 months and lock in your principal. And then you actually get some type of certainty that you're going to get a return of 10% on your staking rewards. Until then, staking is a dud, in my opinion. You got to get. Do you guys kind of understand that with the futures markets and how you hedge out and lock in your principal? Like if you stake and the coin goes down 40%, it doesn't matter that you got 12% more in interest over the course of a year, right? It's just a massive loser. So I think staking will not really take off or be a lucrative option until you get these derivative markets and futures contracts, really, so that you can hedge your principal and then you're playing on the house's money on the rewards that you accrue over 6 or 12 months.
Got it.
All right, I'm gonna take a slightly different take. I think the proof of stake works okay. I think it is a really poor method of distribution, meaning you want to get all the coins out there so that you have stakers, and so you can't really seed a system via staking because you have to have those people to stake. Otherwise, it's sort of really an ICO type model. But I think it's not bad as security, and I think I'm gonna raise from the staking because with proof of work, it's kind of the same thing, right? The price can go down. I mean, there's nothing that says staking versus proof of versus is the controls the supply and demand, and that's really the nature of the coin and what its value is in its tokenization model.
So Tron, kind of along that same vein in terms of, I know you and I were talking before, you have a strong aligned interest with us in keeping mining available to everyone. And I know in that spirit, you guys came up with the X16, which made it more difficult to create ASIC miners. by randomizing the algos based on the previous block hash. So maybe you can dive into that. And then in that same vein, I'd love to hear from Crystal, and then I know Matt, in terms of some of the things you're doing, how you guys are also helping everyone take advantage of this opportunity.
So we did do that. X16R does rotate it. We do have, I'm going to say in air quotes, ASICs. They're really glorified FPGAs, so they were able to be repurposed or reprogrammed when we made a modification to X16 or X16R V2, which just made a tweak. We thought would take off the ASICs, but they weren't really ASICs. They could be reprogrammed. So they're back on the network. They are only about 30 or 40% more efficient, but they are cheaper than a whole rack of video cards. So they do have kind of a dominant effect on the network now. So we're switching from that to kind of a prog power, which is put 4 coins, so that we're only one with that mining algorithm. We're going up, and so that's going to be on the network. And the goal in general is to make it so anybody who has a gaming rig put on and be profitable, or not necessarily profitable, can mine and be competitive.
Nice. Crystal, what about you? What do you think needs to be done, or things that you're working on to make this accessible for everyone?
I like the idea of democratizing mining and letting everyone participate. Clearly, not everyone's going to be able to do it with hardware. And if you're like me, you're sitting in the middle of Puerto Rico, it's not very ideal to use our energy grid here for the purposes of something like mining. Also, you know, Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and it is a very specific chain that has very specific requirements around it. And beyond that, I think it's never going to stop being mined until all 21 million of those tokens are unlocked. So, you know, when we're looking at how to bring crypto to a more mainstream audience, we have a token on our platform. So we built the SenseChat Messenger, which the new version that's coming out has a concept of mining. And I'll use some air quotes around mining because we want to give users the ability to do an action that results in the distribution of a token. And by validating themselves as a human, they are validating the network. It helps us to essentially creating a utility structure with a sort of mining distribution that comes along with it. So what we decided was that we wouldn't use any data that's on the phone. While we do want to have a peer-to-peer and distributed network of servers, the type of block producers or the validators on the network, the nodes, have to be one type of user. That has to be a tech user that understands what they're doing on that side. But for the consumers, we wanted to take it all the way down to letting them have a behavior on the network that allows them to also unlock tokens. So we're testing out this new method now, and we're going to be releasing our next version. It's an alpha now, which does allow people to basically validate. And it's the first step to create a really distributed messaging network. But we have to take baby steps. We started out the gate wanting to be the first decentralized messenger. We learned really quickly that we have all of these issues with the peer-to-peer systems, and that people don't fundamentally understand the concept of nodes. So we've taken a step to separate the two things. But I think that you know, we will not be mining with hardware ever on our chain. We'll at some point likely fork the EOS network. Right now we're still dependent on the EOS mainnet, but given some of the performance issues and CPU and otherwise, we're likely to start a new chain at some point here. You know, but we're definitely on the other end of the spectrum from very serious tech-heavy data center to consumer. We're edging now into the consumer side.
That's really cool. Very interesting. Matt, can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you guys are doing? Obviously, in conjunction with your report. Obviously, if you guys haven't checked it out, go check out his company's report, and you can maybe tell him where to find that. But a lot of really interesting nuggets there. But you guys are also really helping people access hardware in a very easy-to-use fashion, so they can get into cryptocurrency mining.
Yeah, so the research report, people can go to blockwaresolutions.com and get the research report there. Definitely give it a read, fairly insightful, I believe. And then we're running mining rigs in the US. It's a hosting facility as well. So US miners any miner can get access to it internationally. But we have miners on site, so people don't have to wait for the 2-month lead times with China. And they could buy the hardware directly from us, and we'll also manage it. There's 24/7 on-site management. They can VPN in, so they'll own the hardware, and we're going to get them good rates, especially compared to the market. We saw a lot of miners get locked in at 6.5, 7 cent plus. So we're trying to get individual U.S. miners between 5.75 to 6.5, 6.3 cents, depending on volume. So it's when you look at our report and where we think the different layers are, they should be able to survive long term with those rates. So
very cool. Well, Marshall and Dustin, we're going to end with you two. Just some final thoughts to wrap up in culmination to all this.
I'll let Marshall go first.
Yeah, I will say to Dustin's point, Bitcoin mining, everybody asks me, is it profitable? No, unless you are willing to invest, 5 million or more, or if you're willing to team up with somebody like Matt and invest, at least $1 million, you should probably lean more towards something that's geared towards enthusiasts. And if you're not technical, something like EOS or a staking-based system, I would definitely check out the SenseChat app. Been on it since day one. It's a really cool platform. But yeah, it's interesting what's going to happen with the halving. And with the global economic issues right now, I think we're geared for a great year on into 2021.
Good
Dustin?
stuff. So I'll just kind of, Marshall's correct, so like for me, I'm more of like the at-home kind of miner guy. I'm not like a big at-scale kind of miner. And so the thing that I'm noticing that I'm part of these Facebook groups, and it seems like, even despite the profitability going down, there's more and more people joining the groups every day. I see the same post. Hey, I'm getting into mining. And I think that there's something to be said about a person that just has maybe 3 or 4 graphics cards that just wants to get into this space and do what we call, spec mining, where we mine these newer coins before people like Marshall and Matt get a chance to, run ASICs on them. And, we accumulate them. So there's really 2 choices. You could, mine at a loss and mine the coins and hold them, or, pretty much not mine at all because it's not profitable. And so I think that there's a rather large gathering of people like me that would rather spec mine, hold on to those coins, because we're not investing a lot of electricity. We don't have enough capital to do that. But, if we're spending maybe $100, $200 a month on electricity, accumulating these coins with the thought process that when they do hit the larger exchanges, that we could sell those and get, some kind of 3, 4, maybe 5x return on our investment. And to us, it's fun. It's that's what it's really all about, So
well, no, I love all the perspectives, guys. We're going to end on this note. I'm going to ask one question, and it's just a 1-word answer, just for fun. We're not going to talk about the price of Bitcoin. Everybody asks, like, what's the price going to be at the end of the year? Forget all that. All right, ready? The amount of months it's going to take until we get to a bull run post halving. Marshall?
6.
Matt?
4.
Dustin?
6.
Ron?
2.
Okay. Chris?
Tron's 2.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that number is directly related to the amount of months we are in quarantine.
Oh, I like it. Brent, you're on, so you have to answer now.
Where do I think it's going to be at the end of the year?
Not the price. How many months until the bull run post halving?
How many months until the bull run? You know what? Actually, I'm kind of in the 2-month range too.
Nice.
I hope you're right.
Same.
Okay. Last thing, I'm going to end with 12 months. I'm just going to throw it out there. It's going to take a little while. I like what Matt says. There's going to be a lot of capitulation. There's going to be the mining difficulty adjustment. A lot of the older hardware, they're going to have to capitulate. They're going to have a hard time paying their bills, so they're going to have to pay for that energy somehow. So anyway, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. This is such a great panel. You guys have a wonderful day.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.